Techlandia is recorded at the Central Office on the East Side in Portland. Central Office is a one stop for all your office or meeting needs. Check them out at centraloffice.com.
Welcome to the latest episode of Techlandia, Tao's regular podcast series. My name's Skip Newberry, President and CEO of Tao. And with us, we're pleased to have as our guest, Robert Cross with Cross Consulting Services and Outfit. Cross, Robert, welcome.
Skip, thank you for having me today. It's exciting to join the conversation. I know that we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do. So would love to, get some background from you first for our listeners. You've got a really interesting professional journey that you went on. We met back when you were in the banking and finance sector, and would love if you could maybe spend a few minutes just kind of walking us through how you ended up getting going professionally and walk us up to present day. And if you've got an opportunity to share a little bit about, common themes or things that have motivated you throughout your career, that's always interesting as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. You and I met in the mid 2000s. My background in commercial finance led to an opportunity with the Energy Trust of Oregon. And that kind of really kicked it off as far as the past couple decades. Finance and energy intersect. And I had opportunity to work with Peter West, a director at the Energy Trust of Oregon, and later worked at Umpqua Bank on Green Street lending, and spent some time in Portland for about a good 10 years. That work led to more exposure and what I would call the energy transition, working on solar. Energy storage has picked up a lot in recent years, and more broadly speaking, electrification. So my consultancy focuses on advisory work with leadership teams on product market fit, go-to-market strategy. And some of those companies are here in Oregon, including Alexity, which is a software company based in Bend and has offices in Portland, and then Mayfield Renewables. The outfit piece, the design studio, I guess, is kind of the most interesting aspect. My scholastic background was in comm and film. And I think that at the end of the day, and we'll probably get into this throughout the call, there's a lot happening with energy transition, whether it's utility, hyperscale, power demands, and some of that's going on in your neck of the woods, or just homeowners and ratepayers trying to understand what this is all about. And Outfit has really grown to address that issue. And we're a design studio that simplifies complexities and tries to present information in a compelling way through film and animation. So it is a bit unorthodox between the product or engineering aspect, the revenue strategy dynamic, and the art, but they come together in the sense that at the end of the day, you have to be able to explain complex things in a meaningful way, and that's where I think that's where a lot of opportunities showing itself.
And you mentioned a bit about some of the work you're doing from a storytelling standpoint with Outfit.
Yep.
One of the things that you involved me with last year was dispatches from the energy transition. Can you tell us more about what was the inspiration for that series and sort of what's coming up?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing up dispatches. So I mentioned Mayfield Renewables briefly, and Ryan Mayfield and his company in Corvallis. we had some success working with them several years ago and just getting out subject matter expertise through YouTube, on LinkedIn, in a way that was accessible to a technical audience. We decided to kind of expand upon that and create a second podcast called Dispatches from the Energy Transition. I work with Lucas Miller, who's my partner at Mayfield. In the case of dispatches, we're focusing more on what I would call edge of grid or evolving technologies. A lot of it is at the intersection of hardware and software controls. Um, Software is playing a growing role with all of this because of time of use and peak demand and obviously artificial intelligence. So I think it's a good opportunity for Tao's audience and your entrepreneurs to be cognizant of that. So a fair amount of our episodes hit on edge of grid, hardware, software, and then recently we've announced a partnership that includes RE Plus events, and we've done some live presentations. Just last week in Houston, Texas, we did 3 of them with 6 companies, and it was pretty well received. I think the key to all this is trying to be interesting and compelling. If it's dry and technical, you lose some of the audience. But if you don't really have the subject matter expertise chops or explain the value of engineering, you don't have the credibility for the content. So it's trying to find that right balance.
I think what you've just described sums up a lot of the challenges in kind of reaching a broader audience about the importance of technology, right? And its impact. It can be seen as kind of esoteric, overly complex, not easily kind of digestible. And that's where the storytelling element is so critical and making it, relevant to people in their day to day work and life, as well as
Yeah.
you know, how it potentially, you know, impacts them in a material way is something that we're always struggling with as well, and always trying to find that balance. And you mentioned too the role of some of the technologies in some of the um, themes that you're exploring, and yeah, the focus on software and data optimization, and orchestration across all these really complex systems is a space that's creating a lot of really interesting opportunities for innovation and new products. And we're seeing that in a lot of the companies we're working with, in Tao. So it's exciting to be partnering with you on this. And we're seeing more and more opportunities to kind of cross pollinate, more quote unquote pure tech companies with the application of that technology across infrastructure that supports renewable energy. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about the battery life. Speaking of storytelling and the role of technology meets renewables and energy storage. Tell me more about that venture, which is a more recent one.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So, Grayson Shore is my partner in the battery life. It's a joint venture with the Pacific Northwest Battery Collaborative, which is a non for profit that he started. The battery segment is pretty strong in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of interest, founders, scientists, startups, and that group has been going on for over a year. Grayson reached out to me and had an interest to start telling those stories. Again, I think one of the challenges about any technological transition, and we see this with AI, we see this with energy, it can feel murky at times.
Mhm.
It could feel inaccessible to lay people at times. It's coming any which way. And the idea behind the battery life and dispatch is, to an extent, is to humanize it a bit and talk about the why and show how this is happening. Uh, again, it's like trying to meet the balance between the interested layperson versus people that are more deep into this. But we have 2 episodes in pilot. So we filmed in Seattle with Group 14, which is a startup focused on silicon technology, and then spent an afternoon in UW Test Labs, where entrepreneurs are assessing the viability of different battery chemistries. And then last month, we filmed Zinc 5, and Tim Heisel, who I believe is a member of the Technology Association of Oregon, and a company that's got some great traction. And then again, on the software side with Alexity. And the thought process here is be entertaining and informative. And actually, our plan for the premiere is to have it as part of the activation at the Great Transformation later this summer.
Awesome. Well, a little bit of background, shifting gears to the Great Transformation. So that event, you and I got to talking about some of the themes that are now incorporated as part of that event back in 2023 and 24 with some initial concepts. And then, 2025, last summer, was the first time that we kind of brought it all together in the Great
Yeah.
Transformation, which focused on, AI, data centers, and energy innovation. And, that one had about 200 attendees in Bend at the River House Lodge. And now this year we're gonna go much bigger, also in
Yeah.
Bend.
No pressure.
So what I wanted to ask you, like, in your mind, why the Great Transformation? Why now? Why is this relevant?
Great question. So the Great Transformation for me speaks to the energy transition, which is obviously broad, it's sweeping, it's huge, it's touching on all sectors across the world. Um, from my vantage point, in some ways, it's happening too slow and too fast at the same time. Um, Power demands are rising, utility costs are rising. There's a real physics problem coming to our grid, and that presents a lot of challenges. Uh, on the opportunistic side, the cost of deployment, levelized cost of energy for renewables, the market adoption of batteries, the electrification of the grid is happening. So there's really, you know, opportunity and challenges happening concurrently. But I felt that there was a need to get people in person. I think so much of what we do is digital these days. COVID had an impact on that. Work remote had an impact on that. And what I was excited to in working with you and talking about pulling this thing together, I think it's still important to get people in a space and the crossover sectors. In particular, with the Great Transformation, I think part of the reason why it's resonated, we have, you know, your well-established hyperscalers, utility, Fortune 100 type companies in the room, rubbing elbows with entrepreneurs and startups. You have project developers that were working on mid-market C&I stuff, um, talking to hardware and software vendors. And I think in order to make this thing happen, it's collaboration and breaking through and having real hard discussions about some of these topics that are needed in order to accelerate the transition. And I think that our event is part of that. It's just one event, but I think the format's compelling.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a situation where Oregon has one of the largest concentrations of data centers in the U.S. and in the world, especially when measured in terms of IT transaction volume flowing through those data centers. And you also look at the fact that here in the Northwest, we're strategically positioned between two very well-established tech hubs, center of cloud computing in Seattle, and then some of the largest tech companies in the world in Silicon Valley. And a lot of the compute, the semiconductor related design and development happens here in Oregon. And we've got the makings of, the energy innovation ecosystem, as you pointed out earlier and described, with the talent here and the companies that are doing work in energy storage and adjacent areas. And you put all that together and you have the makings of a global center of excellence. So I'm pretty excited about where this event could go next. You mentioned too some of the silos that exist across different aspects of all this infrastructure that underpins modern AI. And I'm wondering, where do you see kind of the biggest opportunities for the Northwest to be a leader um, in in this space, especially given all the traveling and different conferences you've attended around the US in recent years? What do you see as our competitive advantage here?
Well, I think you hit on it. Um, we got the semiconductor aspect, and your organization on the software side. Uh, it's an
Well, I
important.
guess
It's Go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
Well, I guess what I was trying to get at, my question was a little ambiguous or not quite as specific as I would like. I guess what I was trying to get at with that is, like, what do you see as our competitive advantage um, when it comes to breaking down the silos, right? So we've got different sectors that have greater prominence and influence in different aspects of you know infrastructure that
Yeah,
underpins AI. Some it's more policy oriented, others it's workforce, others it's private sector innovation. Like, what
yeah.
what do you see as this region's sort of potential ability to break those silos down, or do you feel like we're at a disadvantage? I'm just wondering.
So I think our advantage, and you know this because we both lived in the state almost 20 years, there is openness in regard to collaboration.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of talented people here, and there's people that are passionate about um, this topic at large and the many pieces of it. And I think the challenge and part of what we're trying to do is coalesce the whole. The sectors that are material are finance and banking for
Hmm.
sure, because bankability plays a real role relative to project economics, um, for certain. And there's a growing need and an interest. I've been talking to some of the regional leaders in that regard. Uh, on the AI hyperscaler part, particularly with the data centers, there's a desire from my segment on the renewable side with co-location of renewables. And it's kind of funny, like I've been in Bend for a couple of years. There's a lot of talent here. There's a
Hmm.
lot of executive leadership here, and there's a desire for growth and more investment. So I think the opportunities, the openness and desire for collaboration. The challenge is, how do you translate that into a real tangible roadmap where business decisions and investment are being made at any degree of scale? But I can kind of see, and you're aware of this from the work with the state and just regionally, the whole country is looking at this in some way, shape, or form. And I feel that Oregon has a unique, and the Pacific Northwest have a unique opportunity to plant the flag and to speak to the challenges and really address them, which which I think is the focal point of the great transformation. Like, what is the reality of AI, clean tech, and renewables? Like, what are the real challenges and opportunities with co-location?
Hmm.
Um, what is the opportunity of grid modernization at scale for our local utilities. How do we overcome some of these hurdles? And when I went to John McMahon's, he has what the tech bend, and he kind of had a little bit of an energy spinoff a couple weeks ago. I think the other facet of this is that we need an energy mix that can address that really can truly address the growing power need. So there's a lot of talk about, you have new scale on the nuclear side, Clay's energy with geothermal. Those three pillars are the opportunity. The openness, the collaboration sets the table. But how do we really come together and make some significant decisions at scale? I think that that's the missing piece. And by bringing utilities, banking, the hyperscalers together with this kind of emerging sector, I hope that's where the rubber meets the road, at least in a couple instances.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, this opportunity for uh, greater innovation is part of this transformation takes hold, and that really has implications for the region when it comes to an economic development strategy. As much as change is difficult, people don't like it in
No,
general. It's, you know, part of
no
human
one likes it.
nature. But
Yeah.
but at the same time, like to the extent that the amount of interest and business pursuit of commercial opportunity with AI is forcing some of these long-standing questions to be addressed around, okay, yeah, we do need a more resilient energy infrastructure and grid in the US, and the amount of money and attention flowing into this space now is forcing a lot of innovation quickly around how do you do this in a more sustainable way using renewables, but also create more opportunities for economic growth. Each of these is a market unto itself, um, a new market opportunity. And I'm wondering where do you see some of those greatest opportunities for innovation and growth as it relates to our economy in the region? Are there one or two that stand out for you?
I'm hugely bullish on batteries. The reality is that as the cost of deployment um, declines pretty rapidly, renewable energy is intermittent, and without being able to store power and dispatch it at the right time, you lose a lot of the juice, for lack of a better word. But I feel as batteries start to scale, battery technology modernizes. At the end of the day, no one wants to waste their utility cost and have these huge peak demand charges. Um, Ratepayers don't like it. Businesses are struggle with it, and I feel if utility programs can advance and start operating at some degree at scale, that there is a significant market opportunity in distributed generation, and that market opportunity can take a spent or wasted cost that really doesn't serve anybody well, and can lead to that innovation. So that's what I'm looking at. You kind of go beyond that in the microgrids and resilience and reliability. And those systems cost more money, obviously, but the market adoption of batteries, both in the CNI and utility scale space, can make a real tangible difference. But again, it really requires more collaboration from the IOUs, from um, the PUC, from the people in this industry as well, to kind of break through and make change happen, I guess.
Mhm. And so for folks who are interested in, potentially attending the Great Transformation, I was wondering if you could take a little bit of time to just kind of break down what's high level the sort of format that they can expect?
Yeah.
What's the expectation around some of the programming? What are some of the main themes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, this year we're expanding from a half day to 2.5 days. We'll have an opening reception to gather and convene everybody at Wednesday night at the Rubber House Lodge in Bend. We'll have 2 days of full programming on Thursday and Friday. There'll be, focus sessions, 3 each day, and we'll have kind of like, lightning talk breakouts with entrepreneurs that funnel into some networking. But the 3 themes that we, focused on this year: 1, collaborative innovation. We touched on it a bit. How do we, transition at scale? How do we address artificial intelligence, clean tech, and renewable energy? What does that look like? So that's your data center, that's your grid scale technologies. The second theme is grid modernization. So how do we, move beyond hardware, apply software, make the grid more resilient and using real-time data for reliability? And that's more the CNI mid-market piece. And then the third segment's commercialization of technology. There's entrepreneurs aplenty. There's a lot of great people working in the Pacific Northwest on these technologies. And sometimes people are skeptical, like, what is the commercialization path? What is product market fit? How are you going to compete? So we'll get to hear from some entrepreneurs that are doing great things. All of the sessions are meant to be interactive. All the sessions will be filmed by Outfit, the design studio. And I think part of the reason why the format resonates, this isn't, a 10,000 or 20,000 person conference. This is kind of a curated, intimate gathering for 700, several hundred people that want to take part of a program, that want to interact, but also have the opportunity to sit down in person and have meaningful conversations while they're in Bend for a few days.
Well, thank you for that, Robert. I know I'm really excited about the event, and it's going to be a lot of fun in the coming weeks and months as we continue to deliver on putting the program together. And as you think about this space, what are some of the things that you typically, read to stay up on things, or are there podcasts you listen to? Anything that you might recommend to our listeners that you've found particularly interesting lately?
Yeah, there's quite a bit out there. The industry does a pretty good job, and the media is growing. So, Canary Media is good to follow. Heat Map News is good to follow. Latitude Media. I presume some of the audience might be familiar with Jiga Shaw. Those both have websites that are pretty updated, podcasts that can really segment on different topics. I'm pretty good friends and colleagues with Elisa Wood of Energy Changemakers. That podcast and kind of web audience focuses a lot on the stuff that we're talking about here. So, artificial intelligence, utility scale, distributed generation. They're a client and a partner, but Mayfield Renewables, if you're trying to get into the industry, um, or if you're trying to better understand what's happening, they have a lot of media that's more technically oriented with their Code Corner stuff and Ask Mayfield Anything, which is with Ryan himself. So there's quite a bit out there, and the industry is pretty active on LinkedIn. And if you're passionate about being part of the solution, it's not too difficult to network with. And we try to share information, but those are some sources.
Thanks. And as we wrap up, any parting words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
Um, I think you kind of started it out a little bit. You were talking about how this transition, any type of technological change, can be off-putting, murky, scary. Um, I would like to be optimistic and think about ingenuity and our ability to navigate change. You think about the Pacific Northwest and how people find their way here. Um, if you're interested in taking part in the great transformation, it's a really great venue to have those discussions and see the opportunity. Change is going to happen any which way, but we all play a role or all play a part in maybe making it a little bit softer, a little bit more human by bringing our passion, our ideas to the table. It's not solely about technology. It's also about people and impact.
Well said. Well, thank you, Robert, for taking some time to spend with us today, and look forward to continuing to partner with you on things like the Great Transformation. And if folks want to check that out, we've got a link through the Tau event page on our website. And the Tau website can be found at techoregon.org. Thank you all for joining us.
That's a wrap on this episode of Techlandia, the podcast, where innovation meets insight. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow us, leave a review, and share it with your fellow tech explorers. You can follow us at techoregon.org for updates and more tech-fueled content. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep building the future.